The dream was broken. A light shattered into 1,000 pieces and scattered in the wild. It had seemed so clear when I was young, in spite of its vague outline. But the journey gets the best of us. Reality is not slow to tell you that the dream was just that. A vague flimmer that merely exists to excite you onward. Reality is different. Reality is grey and monotonous, like the weather we were heading into.
Really feel the wind. Driving right into heaven here.
After a good night's sleep in a green paradise, we were on the last leg of the journey. Having passed through the lowlands, we had ascended a second mountain range, much grayer and barer, a foretaste of the fjord to come. But first,
Should I drop you off right here or something?
we had some drone shots to do. Unbeknownst to us, we were about to have an encounter. This was the day we accidentally became insanely famous. Right where we were having our lunch, a fleet of American overlanders had just settled down. They were creating a video series about the Nordics that I later got to watch. There were elements of this encounter that stuck with me. Not that I want to do exactly what they did, but seeing our shabby Volvo and our single camera alongside this fleet of cars and equipment, doing the same as us on a completely different level.
What's up?
Do you concur?
Yeah? But how do I
Lick
taste?
twice to concur.
She licked 3 times, thrice.
Uh-oh.
That's extra good.
Oh.
That's like a 5-star review.
It did become somewhat emblematic. A reminder that really small beginnings can grow into something more substantial.
That's the origin, in a lot of ways, many ways, to Expedition Overland. And nobody knew what they were doing. Had a little bit of money in my pocket for the first time, built my truck up a little bit, took my father-in-law to Moab, and a few months later had the idea, you know what, maybe we can make a show.
But at this time, it was also a reminder of how I had mismanaged my own vision. When watching their series later, I noticed that the very tip of our car got a cameo. We were officially insanely famous.
I'm sad to be in Norway.
What a terrible thing.
Yeah, a tear of all thing.
All right, you're done. You're done. You're not allowed to talk for another hour.
Luckily, we didn't know of our fame yet. So with our feet planted on terra firma, we were more than ready to do the hike. The idea was to sleep in our tent up by Kjeragbolten, near one of the Lysefjord's best views. But the wind had been steadily picking up since last night, and the bare rock up there would offer no shelter. So it was to be a late hike, and still the clouds hung as a grey blanket above us, as grey as to quell dreams. Since my early years, hiking these same mountains with a camera in hand, the dream of starting something of my own had refused to die. It had morphed and moved through various expressions until one took root and took over. In 2016 came Red Hat Factory, the brand I started when first exposed to Red Hat culture, the brand that I grew out of my own heritage. A brand story that was perfectly told in these very mountains. It seemed perfect, coming back here over 15 years later to pull the long lingering story out of that fjord. But over those 15 years, I hadn't only found my dream, I had broken it. For now, we were focused on putting one foot in front of the other. The Kjerag hike starts with a brutal uphill climb. Then you're forced to descend and do it again. And again, the final, longest up climb. And right before that up climb, there's a little side path that few people know about. One that gives you a vertigo-inducing suspension between the cliff above you and below you. As I lay there, I held on to a secret. In spite of my 6 years of hard work, Red Hat Factory had finally run out of money. In fact, we were dangerously into the red. And behind the scenes, we had made one last attempt to turn things around by shutting down almost everything, restructuring whatever was left, and just wait it out, while I went back to my old job.
Alright, you ready to hike the rest of it?
I'm very ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
There was only this one thing remaining. I had made a promise to Kevin to take him to Norway, show him the fjords, and that we would make a brand film.
Ooh, hold on. Can you walk up past me?
And promises are made to keep. It was the last expenditure before we cut everything down to the bare bones.
All right, and back the other way.
And before we went, I wrote a script. Now, at the deathbed of my company, I wrote as if this video would be the only memory left of it, free of any commercial restraint, algorithms and salesmanship squeezed out of mind. I wrote for that 14-year-old me, only for the sake of the story, nothing else. Norway to me is mountains, came the first line. Reaching the top of the last climb, there's a long stretch of flat grey rock, which slowly brings you closer to our end goal. A plateau that overlooks the fjord, the roof of the world. And I held my breath, dreaming that the grey veil would part just one time for the pinnacle of our film and journey.
Turn around there. Ready, go.
Sun's just giving us a little smile.
I felt faith kicking in my belly. My journey had led me here, and with this last hurrah, I had done the best I could. I had written for the 14-year-old me who once had a dream and a camera in hand. I had taken a seed from the dead dream and replanted it in the form of a new film. A foundational story, perhaps made at the end of all things. But one thing still remained up here. Kjeragbolten, the iconic rock discovered by avid mountaineers long before roads existed here. It is lodged in between two cliff faces, with a 984-meter drop to the fjord below, and is nowadays visited by approximately 70,000 people a year, many which venture out on it. Making our way from the overlook towards the nook where the bolt is, we got lost. We ended up having to climb down a small crack to avoid going back around.
Hey, look, what's that?
Oh my god!
Is that like a rock? It's stuck there? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
The rock was before us. The old worn tourist trap that miraculously has not claimed any lives yet. As per usual, by choosing to travel out of tourist season and with a little grey weather threatening on the horizon, we had the place to ourselves. But the light was dying. The main footage for our brand film was a wrap, and it was time to head back.
For some reason there's something mesmerizing about being in the darkness and watching the light.
It was a symbolic downclimb for me. The seed was planted in faith that it would grow into something. And now, as we moved down into the valley to finish up the trip, I felt like we were heading down into the earth, the seed to be watered. We hiked down with the wind at our backs, which brought the rain. Down all the way to the water, where we set up camp. There we slept on well-groomed grass and had a real shower to prepare us for our return to civilization. I remember falling asleep that night, so happy that the light had broken through and the pinnacle of our film would look the part. But also that I had reclaimed some of that light of pure, unadulterated creation, all in the name of just telling a story. If my company was to survive, this is how I wanted the foundation to be laid. The word fjord has an interesting etymology. It comes from the same root as ford, meaning a shallow place of crossing a river. They both go back to a Proto-Indo-European root, pertus, that simply means crossing. The word fjord was probably given because these bodies of water were used as pathways for the Vikings, who settled along its habitable reaches. The other part of this fjord's name, Lyse, means light. So taking a bit of creative freedom, I named the fjord in my own mind the path to light.